Hello and welcome to the webinar, Starting a Business in a Rural Market. My name is Patty Cantrell. I'm with the New Growth Community Development Corporation. We serve West Central Missouri along with our parent organization, the West Central Missouri Community Action Agency. And we are also home to the Start Here Business Acceleration Network. That's several organizations, including the Small Business Development Center for our region. Kelly Asbury, who directs that, will be presenting today. We're really excited to let you know about the network because we have been working hard over the past year and a half to really join forces to provide entrepreneurs in rural markets with the technical assistance they need, credit building, helping them be able to access, make more and save more with credit, better credit, and also micro enterprise loan lending so they can get going and growing. So anyway, we'll send you information about that. Very excited. And so what we're doing is making sure people connect with people like Kelly, and Kelly works with entrepreneurs all through the region, and she'll be sharing with you some of what she's learned about starting a business in a rural market. We'll save some time for questions and answers at the end. Please do put your questions in that box, and we'll be following up with you on that at the end. So I'm going to hand it over to Kelly, and she'll pop up her slides here in a sec. All right. Thank you all for coming, and thank you, Kelly, for your time today.
Thank you, Patty. Welcome, everyone. I am Kelly Asbury. I'm with the Small Business Development Center at State Fair Community College. We cover a 12-county region, and it is largely rural. So definitely have had my experience working with rural companies, and it's a unique situation. So oftentimes it is always the same basic steps to any small business. And I always provide similar material to my clients for those same basic steps. And for rural areas, I think, though, there's additional considerations that we're going to get to. So I provide a startup checklist to my clients, and that shares those same basic steps that you see. Got to move some things around so I can see what I'm looking at. Here's the same steps, as well as the links to, I provide links to being able to get licensure, legal structure, some helpful sites for logos, website building, things of that nature. And then I also recommend to all my clients, and you, if that's what you're looking to do, to have your bail at least selected prior to starting your business. So at least selected, meaning you won't always need a lawyer. You may only need an accountant once a year, but when the chips are down, you want to make sure that you know who you're going to call when you need them. Being a prior business owner, I didn't know that somebody was going to bash into my central air unit in my building and take out a good part of the wall either. So I knew my insurance agent. I knew right what to do. It's important to know those people ahead of time. Single most important thing for any business is to plan. Business planning is tedious work. It's often overlooked. Some view it as an unnecessary evil because they're so small. They don't think they need to do that. Benjamin Franklin once said it best: if you fail to plan, you are planning to fail. So understand it's a living document. So it's not a one and done. You want to continue planning. It tells you what you had planned to do may or not be right where you are, and that you may have to make some adjustments. Some of the larger companies now started off in their basement or in their garage or even in a barn. Those companies now plan annually for at least 5 years out. So it's something that whether you plan to scale to a large company or not, you still need to know where you are, and an annual planning at minimum is best. So for rural startups, there's going to be additional considerations and challenges. So we're going to break those down just a little bit here. So in another webinar on Tuesday, we addressed the message that it's often told to youth in our rural areas that you're better off to leave for bigger areas. As such, populations have declined in rural areas, making it very tough on existing businesses, let alone startup companies. However, there's a focus now on growing rural communities in many states, which is a positive if you're looking to start a business in one. You need to identify what those opportunities are. In other words, what's missing in the area, what's undersold. Are you solving a problem for the area? Is your product or service unique? And would there be enough buyers? Are you involved locally, or do people know you? And how visible are you going to be? What's your location going to be? What's the facility look like, etc. Broadband it's always an issue in rural territory. It's getting better in some places, but it's still an issue. So you got to ask yourself, with what I have, can I make a living without it if it's not available in my area? Is it going to be a necessity? So what about current situations like COVID, shutdowns, all those possibilities? Is broadband going to be required for you to then pivot your business or change your business model? Are there other options? So I know in our area, there's a couple of spots that have a downtown square where businesses are located. And there's a hot spot there, I guess, for lack of better words, where the businesses kind of split the cost to be able to access it for themselves and for customers that come into the area. It's a driver for them. Access to capital is bigger challenges, I guess, bigger in smaller communities. And that's usually more so, as with any startups, lenders view them as a high risk. There's no guarantee. And what I mean by guarantee, I'll get to that in a minute. So in rural areas, oftentimes there may only be one or two small town banks, is what we call them. And they may be unfamiliar with guarantee programs like SBA or USDA. And it's easy for them to quickly say, no, you're too risky for us, versus even exploring your plan. Often there's credit and or collateral issues, and there's few services readily available or known about that can help you with those issues. It's important for rural startups to connect with resource partners who can help locate credit counseling sources. And I'm going to note, credit counseling is not a repair services. So repair services, excuse me, most often, I can't say about all of them, but most often they are scams, and they can be very pricey and ultimately not worth the price. So be cautious on that. You want to make sure that you're in the credit counseling area with people that know how to help you with that. It's also important to connect with consultants, whether they're SBDC or other like sources, who can help you prepare, help you locate lenders. If you don't have them in your area, they're familiar with those SBA programs or USDA, even helping you find microloans. So oftentimes in rural areas, you don't need a big loan. You just need a small amount to get you started. So those could be in the forms of microloans or revolving loan funds. Some of those funds are available, not in all areas, but they're becoming more so. So what is the environment like in your market? Pardon me. Does your product or service fit the culture? So in other words, a roller skating rink may not go well in a community where most of the population's 50 plus, same as a bar in a religious community. So you just got to make sure you fit the area and you're not trying to force something that's not going to work. Will your business contribute to the tax base, or is there some other benefit that you're providing your community? Are you part of the community, or do you just live there? Are you new to the area, or are you very well known? And if you are well known, what image do you have? Is entrepreneurship encouraged, already visible, or does the area fight against it because they want to keep it that small town feel and appearance? And then are there local chambers, leaders, economic development, or other business owners working in tandem with your efforts? So some add-ons and tips here. I feel like I'm going through these really fast, and I'm hoping you have lots and lots of questions for me. Explore opportunities in going maybe global. If you've got a niche product that you're only going to sell so many in your area, if there's opportunities to sell that nationwide or even global, that's worth exploring. Sometimes you hear go big or go home. Can you start smaller? Can you sell through other venues locally first? You want to get a feel for whether your product looks good first versus going big or going home. Rural business startups grow slower, but they tend to be more profitable because it's usually usually much less costly than larger urban areas. Your customers know you more. They tend to be more loyal. And I would encourage you to be very passionate about your business and not just the product or service that you have. In other words, you can love to knit, but you don't necessarily like showing others how to do that or things of that nature. Be sure you know there is a need for what you offer. Is your product consumable? So if it's consumable, how many customers do you need or sales? Is that going to be enough? Again, start small and keep your risks low. Most businesses don't open the gate perfect. In small towns, too many aggravated customers can close you down quickly. Be teachable and choose your instructors wisely. Everybody's going to offer you advice. So again, I go back to that go big or go home. You may hear that from friends or family. I have faith in you. Just go for it. Be cautious who you take advice from. Take advice from people who know what they're talking about and can guide you and be a mentor, a true mentor for you. Be flexible. So there's no cookie cutter way to opening a business. You want to be flexible and adjust if need be. Know what your costs are going to be. That's part of that very important business planning that we spoke about. It's an important piece from the very beginning. And then learning from your mistakes is what makes you grow. You are going to make mistakes. If you didn't, it wouldn't be human. So you'll definitely want to learn from those mistakes. And that was supposed to last a lot longer than it really did. And I'm hoping that you have lots of conversation for me.
Some conversation for you. I would like, as I was listening to you, and definitely put in some questions and comments, and we can even open it up to a conversation from people. But Kelly, you made a couple points about being involved in the community. Are you involved in the community? And living in a rural community, that is a big deal. Tell me, let's talk more about that.
It is a big deal. So in other words, I can use some examples. I can't use specifics, but I can give some examples. Worked with a client very recently who was considering moving from another state to that small community close to the lake. You know, we heard a lot about the lake this summer and really thinking about opening up a small town business. And the more we talked, not knowing anyone in the community, it was going to be a significant investment. And just the more conversation that we had, they realized they didn't have a fit in that community. And it was going to be, it's tough to get started if you don't know people. If they don't know you, they don't trust you. So yeah, it's good to be involved in your community, and not saying that that can't be done. It depends. But for that particular business, it wasn't a good idea.
So if someone's living in a community, a rural community, or wanting to move there, would that be a good step? I mean, that's partly market research too, or learning about your environment. Start getting to know people if you don't already. And you're going to learn a lot about what people are looking for and what they like, and building some trust and relationships.
Exactly. And knowing the culture. I mean, you've got to know the culture of the town, and I talked about being in tandem with the direction that the town is going. And that's an important piece, because if you're not headed in the right direction with them, you're going against them. And then you can quickly walk your way out of that town, business-wise.
Mm-hmm. And that kind of reminds me of the other question I had. You mentioned, is the community encouraging of entrepreneurship, right? So that relates to kind of what you're talking about here, Art. You're trying to get a sense of if people want more activity or that kind of thing.
Exactly. And Patty, you and I have been in some of those communities where they like that small town feel, and it's threatening to them to think that it might grow. And, you've got outsiders coming in, and then it gets too big and they lose their small town feel, and it becomes threatening. So yeah, you definitely want that, the leadership and people in town, other businesses even supporting new ones, and you can still keep that small town feel and grow and keep your kids at home.
And on that newcomers coming, I found too that people want a lot of what the newcomers want, like things to do on the square that your business might offer, that sort of thing, right? So it's not it's a more of like learning how people might also enjoy that same thing, not just new people.
Exactly.
Right. So you also mentioned micro enterprise, and we were having a webinar the other day that talked a little bit about our new micro enterprise loan fund as the Start Here Business Acceleration Network. And you had some great comments, and I think that would be useful here to talk about how many people are in that micro enterprise realm and what that looks like, right? It's means you can't necessarily get a bank loan yet, but that's a lot of people. And what do they look like, Kelly?
Exactly. And oftentimes that's the case. So, even with, pardon me, even with some of your small town banks, if you go to them and only need $5,000 or less, you're not interesting to a bank. They're not going to make money on you. And that's ultimately a job for the banker, is to make money for the bank. So it's not attractive to them. And, it's for an SBA process and that sort of thing. That's a lot of work to do for $5,000. So those microloans are needed. And oftentimes the businesses that I work with aren't just jumping out the door asking for $100,000. It's more often than not that it's micro lending.
And that's not easy to find in rural areas.
It's not. We had the one loan fund that covered a significant part of the state, if not all the state, which is a great fund. Don't get me wrong, but it's nice to have those local people that are just as excited for you to get going as you are, and able to help you get those funds. And we talked about the credit issues, and that's, again, a lot of the case is it's no credit, bad credit, low credit, and you can have a tremendous plan, but it's those other credit collateral issues that can put a screeching halt to what you're wanting to do. And those revolving loan funds or those microloan programs are set up for businesses just like that. So.
Right. And that's a big reason why Start Here is trying to fill that gap, because we're trying to get, whether you're new to the area or a local entrepreneur, that kind of assistance. I think there's also a question, I don't know if you mentioned this, but around workforce in a rural area, finding people to work for you. Talk about that a little bit.
It's tough. It's real tough. So there's a lot of studies going on right now too, as far as the traffic to and from areas. If you don't have that support in a community and wages in smaller communities oftentimes aren't as attractive as they are in your bigger areas, suburban areas, for instance. So finding workers that want to come to work for you and can work for a price that you can pay, especially as a new business or a newer business, workforce is an issue. And then retaining that workforce, there's attractiveness in, is there housing? Are there things to do in the community? Because if I need to move there, I want to make decent money. I want a nice place to live, and there better be something to do. Otherwise, why am I moving there? or even coming into the area. If I've got to drive 30 miles, are my wages going to be what I need them to be for me to be able to drive 30 miles? So lots of things to consider.
Mhm. And that's why Start Here is working on all those things, because we think the other side of this is people want to live in our rural areas. People want to start businesses here. There's a lot of upsides to being here, right? Why you would go through that. Yeah. What are you finding with people wanting to be here and start a business, say in West Central Missouri, the rural area?
They like that small town living. They're tired of that fast pace and the don't know my neighbor and pardon me. There's just that small town feel of, I know people crossing the street and I can wave and say hi and how are you? And I really mean it, going to the grocery store and seeing people that you know. And um, there's just so many advantages to having a small town and raising children there.
Mm-hmm.
It's there's a lot of advantages. And I think the slowdown that we've had over the last few months has really shown a lot of people that are now able to stay home and figure out, okay, I've been missing out on some things, and thinking through, do I want to continue the way I am, or do I want to try something different? And those small towns are becoming more and more attractive. So
Right. We have a question in the chat box about resources for market research when you're starting in a rural area.
okay, that's a great question. Um, Oftentimes in Missouri, your SBDCs have a tremendous amount of data resources that we provide to our clients at no cost. Um, so we're heavily funded by the Small Business Administration and MU Extension, and in my case, my host institution, which is State Fair Community College. We've got 13 SBDCs throughout the state of Missouri, so it's really finding out what county you're in, and I'm happy to direct you to the local SBDC. Our SBDC spend a lot of money on the databases that we have, and we provide that at no cost to you. So we get a little bit of information as far as what you're wanting to do, where you're wanting to do that, and then we pull that data for you and kind of go over it and help you, if you need it, help you decide if that's going to be a good idea for you or not. To census.gov, I mean, there's some other resources out there that you can look at yourself. Census.gov will give you a population demographic type information. It just depends on the type of business that you're wanting to do as far as what databases are most important to look at. So.
And, that's another reason you might want to start a business in West Central Missouri, is because the Start Here Business Acceleration Network is pulling people together. So SBDC, but also some resources with data for you. Another partner we have is the Extension, University of Missouri Extension. They're all over the state. They have incredible databases and research, and they have offices in each county. So that's a great resource for you to get to know your extension person, and they are connected to other people throughout the whole system that can track down information on different issues or questions you have. So, and SBDC and Extension work together on business support, so they can talk to each other about the different databases. Another partner we have and another resource in any area, rural area, is your Regional Planning Commission. Ours is called the Kasinger Basin Regional Planning Commission, and they do things like market studies for questions like, could this town support a hotel? What kind of, they have to raise money and make that happen, but when a community is wanting to do that, they can be a resource for making that happen. And they've got past studies and a lot of also information. Our Regional Planning Commission is connected to the Department of Economic Development. They're an economic development organization, so they can tap those resources. That's why, again, as a network, we are talking to each other and making sure that we can all connect and get you what you need. And anybody here can go to startheremo.org and start, getting connected. So we're hoping that does pay off in the end. We're getting started, but that's part of the idea, because there are resources there, but it's hard for people to find them all by themselves.
Absolutely.
Or for you to reach people, right? So Kasinger Basin, they have people on the ground, and you have programs, and you can help them deliver it locally.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, it's great to have those partners.
Yeah.
Or a bigger reach with a smaller smaller group. So there's a couple of us that work that 12 county region, and it's great to have boots on the ground and partners that are already there and being able to connect with people when you can't necessarily get there yourself. So
That question just kind of, helped for me reinforce that idea, because we really do. That's several places for people to go.
absolutely.
Um, Also, different communities in your regional planning commission would really be on top of this, are taking steps to be really supportive of entrepreneurs. And one in our region, and we have a blog about it on our website, and we have a podcast about it. One of our towns, Appleton City, Missouri, they really started working on downtown development. They did some things to make it easier for people to fix up downtown buildings. Another community in our area, a lot are doing different things. Benton, Warsaw in Benton County, they are doing a lot of downtown development. Osceola, a very small town in our region, they are working to fix up sidewalks and roads so it's easier for people to live there. And then, that helps downtown businesses maybe get business of people walking in and doing things, especially our retired community. People are wanting to live more where they can be close to the doctor versus way out on the farm or on the highway. So it really comes down to leadership in those communities, and then the leadership of organizations out there trying to help people. But let's just talk a little bit about the opportunity here, right? There is a lot of stuff we need and want in rural Missouri.
Absolutely.
Right? I want to go back to Appleton City, and we probably use this example a lot, but one example, not the only one there. A couple sisters moved home from being gone for a while, and a yoga studio that opened up there is far off the highway, not close to anybody, but they're drawing people from all across the region because that doesn't exist here, right? And a coffee shop opened up next door, and it's happening because people locally want it, and they're drawing people because it doesn't exist anywhere else, or anywhere close. So talk a little bit about that market opportunity. What are some things you're finding people are able to provide if they have the stamina to get it rolling and base themselves in a community here?
Well, what am I finding? I mean, I'm finding all
Yeah.
kinds of things now.
What are the opportunities?
There are tons of opportunities. And it's like you said, when you've got a place, I love Appleton City. It's so cute. You're right. It is. Appleton City is always a good one to talk about, though, because they're so open to new, to growing, to still keeping that small town feel. I mean, I feel like they've got a strong grip on their culture, and but yet they're still willing to open the doors to new ideas, and it's exciting. I mean, I feel like they're excited about that opportunity. Right now, I mean, it's across the board. There's all kinds of people have lots of time to think now, and tons of new opportunities. So specifically, you've caught me off guard, and I can't name anything, but
well, I'll riff on that. I'm good at that. So we've been talking, for example, about tourism in the area, and we find that again, we don't want people coming in hordes to the area, but there we could do a lot more business with people with different assets we have. And as we focus on that, and as some towns have been working to build some cool connections, gravel road riding connections, that has been supporting new businesses in towns like Warsaw and Lincoln next to each other. And so those are the types of things you can get involved in as a rural entrepreneur and find business opportunities through.
Exactly. And so there have been some new ones crop up because of that tourism industry. And part of the tourism with the gravel roads or the trails or whatever it happens to be, most people don't just want to ride the trails. They want to get off the trail and see what's going on in the town, and that brings revenue in. And you're right, it supports those local businesses and, juice shops and some bike shops and bike repair shops and you name it. I mean, there's different things going on. There's canoe rentals. There's what's the other?
Bed and breakfasts. Warsaw, Missouri is seeing that sort of thing pop up as they do more to talk about what they have there as far as trails.
And, you know, I credit part of that to, I mean, part of it's tourism, but I also credit that to COVID because we've been encouraged to get outside more, and people have, and they really have over this last year. And some of those entrepreneurs, those micro enterprises have just boomed because of that. And so yeah, there's tons of opportunity there. I see a question in the other chat. Linda, I have a business that mainly travels to events and sets up, so the location is less important. What are the pros and cons to choosing an in-town location versus unincorporated? No, I didn't really cover that, and that's a great question. So um, I think there's definite pros to that because you can up and move if you're not doing good business in a location versus I've opened my doors and I'm not doing good business and now I've got a significant investment there and I can't move. So um, I mean, but the cons to that is if you don't have a permanent place there and you're doing well, but you can only stay for so long, then it kind of shortens your revenues too. So um,
That brings up the question around the country, and I think more and more in rural areas, the opportunity to get started as a pop-up so that you could, and in places like Warsaw and Appleton City, they have had, second Saturday markets where people could come and pop up and start building their business, and several businesses have grown out of there. So that might kind of relate to that as well. And so getting plugged in and knowing about those opportunities, that's a good way to get started in the rural areas too.
and there's a lot less risk involved.
Mm-hmm.
And that's starting small and growing from there. I mean, that if you can go into business without debt is ideal for any business, or at least the least amount of debt, because cash is king. You got to have the cash coming in. So, great question.
A growing area we know for rural places is a demand for housing, different types of housing, scale of housing, smaller housing for retirees or younger families. And especially as people are wanting to live here, there's opportunity for people who can do housing that is a little different that way, not the same thing we've been seeing for years, that can respond to some of that demand. And also, wouldn't you say, Kelly, people who have some ability to, they don't need to make, if they can get started small, and because there's not tons of people here, but if they can get started, there is some demand there, right? If they have a little bit of a patient business model.
Exactly. Yeah. And if you're starting small, most of the time when you're starting that small, you're probably working another job, and you got some security, I guess, behind that. Is that what you were asking, or did
I guess I was saying, yeah, that, here's an opportunity, but it's not an overnight thing, right? It's a trend that people who might want to do business in rural areas should maybe look into if that's the type of thing they can do.
I agree. Mm-hmm.
All right. Any other questions or thoughts? I've had fun talking about this because there's so many, really, a lot of opportunities in this area.
Yeah.
A lot of challenges in rural areas. But at the same time, it's kind of wide open if you're willing to get connected and be part of the community, take your time, if you have the time and ability to do that.
Right. And we touched a little bit on the broadband, and I just want to throw out there too, as these rural communities start to grow, there's more revenue available for those internet companies that bring in that broadband. And when they see that opportunity, they're more inclined to head that direction. So there's benefits to helping an area grow a little bit too, just to kind of be the driver of that, or ahead of that anyway. So.
And again, it's across the board different, but in rural communities are very much trying to figure out that broadband, and there are, new federal and state support. And in our region, for example, communities are getting together to try to be creative and strategic about how to build on what's coming and what they have already. So,
Okay.
It's a serious issue, we all know, but it can be solved, and we're working on that. I think I would like to take the opportunity to show everybody our video.
I've got
That'd
one.
be all right.
Well, I've got one more question.
Okay, okay. Yeah,
So
that's important.
that's a, where is a difficult place in rural Missouri? Where is a difficult place in rural Missouri to start a business as far as rules and regulations go? Or where is a good place in that regard? I think that is very dependent on the type of business. Whoops, I just blew that way up. I couldn't see anybody. I think that's very dependent on the type of business. So as far as regulations are concerned, regulated businesses typically come at the state level as far as regulations. Although health departments are more local, countywide. So I think in terms of, healthcare or barbers or hairstylists or things of that nature, those are state regulations, and that's statewide. I mean, if you got maybe regulations are tighter in counties on restaurants or healthcare, that sort of thing. That's a tough question for me to answer. I don't know that I have an answer for that. Patty?
Well, it does remind us that, one of the challenges we have in rural areas is because of depopulation, disinvestment, our communities don't have a lot of tax base to pay and really they struggle. And so in order to, like local regulations can be very, very widely, right? Depending on your city council, your county commission. And those people work really hard, but at the same time, there's not a lot of resources for them right now. And so that's, again, the type of thing that our regional planning commission and others do to try to help communities do well on that side and support entrepreneurs. And so I think a good strategy is to, as you're getting to know a community, go in and meet with the city council. You can go in and just ask to be on the agenda or at the public times to introduce yourself as someone who's moved to town or is in town and wants to maybe start something and start asking some questions. It's always good, and I know that's part of business planning, to get in and learn about the regulations and talk to the regulators before you do something. And in rural communities, I think it's especially important to get to know those people who set the regulations that might vary from town to town.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, I think it very much depends on what type of business it is as far as those regulations and whether it's good or bad.
I think there was a clarification on those being home-based business rules. Okay.
Food and events. No, that's fine. Home-based to consider rules, but
you may have fewer regulations out in rural areas because there's less zoning and things like that going on. But that also means that you have less ability to say something about what's going on the property next door. So it's kind of a two-way street on that.
True. And as far as the food industries, and that's usually county-wide, kind of goes back to what, Patty, what you were saying as far as not getting in with, but finding out who those health inspectors are and getting those regulations. Home-based businesses, I mean, I can speak pretty good to Pettis County, which is not rural like Appleton City would be. But I know, the restrictions are typically, you can, from home, you can bake some goods, but you would need commercial kitchen space to be able to really cook and fry and do things of that nature. So again, I think it's very specific to the county that you live in.
And I want to pull a plug here for our region. We have our third annual Food and Farm to Fork Summit coming up, and home-based business and farm and food regulations is one of the things we have on our agenda. That's coming up in February. And so you can learn about it at our website, newgrowthmo.org. And we'd love to have you there. It's going to be an online event, but that is one of the things that our region is trying to help people with through things like the Farm to Fork Summit.
And that is a great summit. I mean, I learned more at the last one. Oh my goodness, it was just a wealth of information. So if you're in the food industry, I would encourage you strongly to attend that. There's just all kinds of things you can learn. Great, good stuff.
And anywhere you are, a network of people working together is really key, and especially in rural areas, because we have great farms and we've got local schools that are interested in buying, but part of what we're trying to do is help everybody work together and make it happen for the income for the farmer and the food for our kids. I think we have one more question, maybe a comment.
Oh, good. Melinda says she's got the website up for later. Thank you. She'll be here. Good.
That's great. And the website that comes up, I mentioned also, so New Growth Mo is the website for New Growth, and that's the Community Development Corporation that I'm part of. Again, partnering with the Small Business Development Center, our Planning Commission, our Community Action Agency, Extension, and others to try to make sure all of our resources come together and we're working together for entrepreneurs. So West Central Missouri is where you want to be in rural Missouri, because we've getting our team together on that. Including the Farm to Fork and other efforts. And so I would like to end with our video, because this is something we're just now going to be getting out, because that loan fund we mentioned, micro enterprise financing, is getting underway. And that's another resource that we are building for our entrepreneurs in the area.
Yep.
So, and we'll be following up with you all and look forward to seeing you at Farm to Fork or other events that we have. Okay, here we go. I'm going to share my screen and make sure that you can hear the sound. All right.
Across our rural region, partners are pulling together to make it easier for small businesses to start here, grow here, and stay here. Our communities and local economies rely on the businesses our neighbors start, the jobs they create, and the investments they make. Resources to help small businesses get going and growing, however, are few and far between in our rural area. The Start Here Business Acceleration Network works to change that. We are joining forces to provide rural entrepreneurs with technical assistance, credit building, micro enterprise financing. Every business, from young to old and small to large, can use technical assistance. It's the business coach who asks tough questions and saves you time and money. It's the seminar on bookkeeping or exporting that keeps your business on the right track. Credit building is the work of making sure rural entrepreneurs can move past credit roadblocks like old medical bills and on into their small business future. With better credit scores, rural entrepreneurs can save more and make more. A small loan can make a big difference for rural entrepreneurs. The problem is most banks cannot afford to make small loans. The Start Here revolving loan fund can handle it. We make small dollar loans so rural businesses can build up to working with banks down the road. Join us. Are you an entrepreneur looking for resources? Get in touch. Do you have resources to offer? Let's talk. Start Here is your rural partner in building a thriving region through greater small business support. Start here, grow here, stay here.
All right, startheremo.org is where you can connect into that. And we're so glad you joined us. We will make a video later available to you all. Any last thoughts, Kelly?
No, I don't. I appreciate everybody. I appreciate your questions.